Hello, my name is Stephanie, and I am your host for Surviving Our Seasons. Today I'm here with a wonderful longtime friend, Dr. Ann E. Smith. We've been friends for over 30 years. Um, in that friendship, she became my mentor. Um, I approve of everything that she could want to do. And I have held on to all of the life lessons that she has taught along the way through our friendship. So I'd like to welcome you to Conversations with Dr. Ann E. Smith. Thank you for coming to my home uh, to be present for this interview. And again, Surviving Our Seasons is about conversations um, with people who have made decisions along the way, how they came to those decisions, hard decisions, made changes in their lives that they may or may not have had the tools to do at that time, but survived them anyway. So we're going to be talking about topics like that today with Ann, my friend Ann.
Thank you, Stephanie, for inviting me to come and talk with you this evening.
I'm so glad that you were finally available, given your travel schedule. That's always been a tough one to nail her down. So Ann and I met, we worked in the same university, and we have become fast and furious friends. She has hundreds of acquaintances and associates, and she has held many titles along the way. Um, Now you aren't from Chicago, but you've been in Chicago the longest part of your life.
Correct. Mhm.
Um, and why don't we start by talking just quickly where you grew up, um, the influence of family, and then we'll dive into some changes that you've made along the way and how you did those.
I was actually born in Poplar Bluff, Missouri, which is a small town in Missouri, in the Boot Hill, Missouri. But my father was a school principal. And so during my lifetime, we lived in Poplar Bluff, we lived in Columbia, Missouri, and then we settled in Jefferson City, which is the capital of Missouri. It's also the home of one of the HBCUs, Lincoln University of Missouri. Um, I attended elementary school there. My father was the principal, and when my brothers were already in high school, my mother was their teacher. My father was the principal, and of course, I was what they call that, a PK, a principal's kid, and so I had to adhere to, being a good person from childhood.
Because everybody was
Right,
watching.
it was expected. I grew up in Jefferson City, and then I attended Lincoln University. And I really went to Lincoln because my brother went to Lincoln. And in fact, 18 members of our family attended Lincoln
Wow.
University going back to 1913.
Wow.
My father's sisters attended Lincoln, and then he attended Lincoln. Then later, my brother and I are attended, and also, of course, graduated from Lincoln. But one of the reasons I went there is because they had a wonderful theater program, and they had summer theater and regular theater. My brother was involved, and I had been sewing since I was a little girl, and I decided that I wanted to follow in the footsteps of one of the costume designer who came every summer, and I decided to become a costume designer. So after I graduated from Lincoln University, I went to the University of Iowa. Went there because my professors at Lincoln had attended University of
Okay.
Iowa, where they had a fabulous theater program. And I went there for a couple of years, got my master's degree, and then came to Illinois, where I taught at Eastern Illinois University, and I was the first full-time African American faculty member.
Wow.
Um, so I stayed there for 4 years, and during that time, I was a costume designer. I taught speech and theater, and then decided to move to Chicago. In the town of Charleston, where there was where there was Eastern Illinois University, there were three grown-up Black people, one couple who lived in the town, and me. There were 4,500 students and 45 Black students at Eastern at that time. So it was a very small community, even though I made lifelong friends there. I decided I really wanted to be in a more diverse environment. So I found a job in Chicago at Northeastern Illinois University,
Mhm.
where I was a costume designer. I taught speech and drama. And then after doing that for about 3 or 4 years, I decided to go into administration. I became the assistant to the president at Northeastern. And I worked there until I was asked if I would become the acting vice president for academic affairs. I did that for a couple of years, and then I decided to leave higher education to see if all the things that I had learned I could use outside of the university environment. So I went into the insurance business, and where I worked for 10 years. And during that time, I was asked if I would consider being on the board of trustees for the University of Illinois, which was a position at that time, you had to run a statewide campaign.
Mm.
So I, I did that. And I would say it's one of the high points of my life that during that campaign and during the election season, I garnered 2,070,202 votes.
Wow. A number apparently that is embedded in your brain.
Yes.
Wow, that's more
Right,
than most senators receive running for office.
right, right.
That was huge.
That for me, that was huge. And so I was on the board of trustees for the University of Illinois for several years, and then I was asked if I would consider being interviewed for a position at the University of Illinois at Chicago. And so I did, and I became the associate chancellor and director of community relations. And after a couple of years, I had the honor of meeting you, Stephanie.
Yes, that's how we came
That's
to
how
know
we
one
came to know
another.
each other. We were both
Yes.
working.
Well, when my toddler walked into your office because I was working late hours during that time
Right,
and brought us together.
right. So I've known your children since they were toddlers, and we have known each other all those years and have enjoyed our friendship all those years.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have. So, okay, you were born into an education family.
Yes,
Everybody was associated with an institution of higher learning or a high school or being an educator. So you've never really um, moved away from that path.
no,
Education has always been
right,
really important to you.
right. On my mother's side of the family, my great grandfather was an enslaved person who was in the Civil War. And afterwards, he attended a it wasn't a university, but it was a school that became Fisk University.
Wow.
And afterwards, he went to teach and open up a school and be the minister in a town called Cornersville, Tennessee. And actually, that's where my mother was born. But So on that side of the family, that began our connection to education. And several of my great grandfather's children attended college. And then, of course, my mother's generation, three of her, my mother and two of her siblings attended university and were teachers or um, social workers. On my father's side of the family, my grandfather was a teacher at Parkland, Southland, Southland College in Arkansas. He met my grandmother, who was a student. He had to give up his teaching career in order to marry my grandmother because it wasn't allowed that you could have a relationship with a student. So they were married, and then they had 8 children, and the two oldest, two aunts, were the first to attend Lincoln University in our family. And then my father and several of his siblings became teachers.
Okay.
And so our my brother, one of my brothers was a teacher, that of course was a teacher. And we're in that makes 4 generations, I think.
Wow. Wow. You've had a long career in education. You then retired from your first career. And then you become the president of the Gamaliel Foundation.
Right.
And that took you all over the world.
Yes, the Gamaliel Foundation is an organization that trains clergy and leaders in congregations how to organize in their communities on behalf of social justice issues. And it happens to be the organization where Barack Obama was invited to come to Chicago, where he became an organizer and then and a trainer. And it was that organizing background, of course, in this campaign, you can see how he put all that together in order to become the president of the United States.
Wow.
But he and I did not actually work together. By the time I went to be the president of Gamaliel, he had gone off to Harvard and had come back to Chicago and was, I think he was by the time I went, I think he was already a state
State
senator.
senator. Great, great, great. So now you've traveled all over the world. You had your second career, and how long were you at Gamaliel? 10 years, 12 years?
I was there for 10 years.
10 years.
Right.
Retired again. So that you could then spend more time traveling all over the world.
Right. Well, at Gamaliel, we had 61 organizations in 19 states and in Great Britain and in South Africa. And so I traveled to both of those, to South Africa and to Great Britain as part of the work for Gamaliel. We established organizations in those countries. And then we were in, as I said, 19 states. So I was traveling a great deal all over the country. But then I retired, and I'd always heard that before you retire, you really need to know what you're going to do. You need to have a plan. So one day when I was at the office, one of my colleagues came in and said, all of you know that I'm a marathoner, but yesterday I completed my first triathlon. And he said, who's going to do the triathlon with me next year? And it was though I felt this hand being pulled up because I was always athletic. And I was a swimmer. I walked and not run. And I did biking. And I always thought, somehow or the other I should be able to put those together. And I knew about triathlons, but I had never done it. So that year I trained and became a triathlete. And I was in the Chicago Triathlon And in these races that you do, they're based on age. And so the first triathlon I completed, I was 72.
Whoa, 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 whoa. How many categories of activity?
Yeah,
There's
well,
swimming, running.
I did a half a mile swim, a 13-mile bike ride, and a 3-mile walk. You're supposed to run, but you can't walk. And I did get a swim coach uh, to help me
So were
because
you a swimmer before you got the coach, or did you become a stronger swimmer?
I became a stronger swimmer
Okay.
uh, with my coach.
And where did you have to swim in the triathlon? In Lake Michigan?
Yes, it's the in Lake Michigan,
Right.
right at Monroe Harbor. That's what I
Okay,
tried.
so just back and forth, or
Well,
you swim out?
the half mile swim is from about Jackson down to Monroe. That's maybe it's a little bit farther than that,
So
but
you're swimming laterally along
right.
the um the
Path.
pathway. You're not going out and back. It doesn't matter
No,
to me because all of that just seems like wow.
no, you swim laterally,
Okay.
from one point to another.
So
That's
once you
half of my,
committed to do your first triathlon as you were training, was there ever a time that you said, "What have I signed up for?"
of course, because it takes a great deal of energy to do that
And discipline.
and discipline. But I did it. And once I did it, you become slightly addicted to it.
Hmm.
Um, so I completed 4 Chicago triathlons. And then during that time, I um I'd heard about, but I began to investigate the fact that there is something called the National Senior Games Association. And this is an organization for people who are 50 to 100 plus, where you have an opportunity to compete in, they have about maybe 25 different sports that you can compete in. And so I decided I wanted to compete in the National Senior Games. And the first one I did was in Minnesota, and I did the triathlon. And after I did that triathlon, I really began to have issues with my back. And so I talked to the trainer, my coach, and the doctors. We decided maybe I should just swim. And so since that time, I have been swimming competitively in the National Senior Games. And so I have been to New Mexico, Birmingham, um, Fort Lauderdale, Pittsburgh, uh, and the next one that I'm going to compete in is going to be in Des Moines, Iowa. But when at the state, in order to be in the national, you have to compete in the state. And at the state, I win gold medals. And I competed in 6 different events. I swim the 500 yards, 200, 100, and the 50-yard freestyle. And then I do the 100 and the 50 backstroke. And when I go to the state competitions, there's usually not that many people my age. And so I win gold medals and
So
silver
there are
medals.
categories, there are age categories for the competition. So let's just say the people over 72 to 76 are in a category.
Okay, well, it's like this, 70 to 74, and then 75 to 79,
Okay.
then 80 to 84, 5 to.
I just want to give our audience just opportunity to soak that in because everybody's raising their hand right now going, oh, I want to do that now. I want to do that too.
Well, we invite you to participate. The only thing is that you have to find in your state, and every state has either a national senior games or they have a senior Olympics.
Mhm.
And you just look them up in your state. In fact, you can go to the national NS it is
See, that's
GA
okay.
NSGA, and they list all the states and they give you the contact person and you find out where your how that when your competition in your state is going to be. Because in order to be in the national senior games, you have to have won either a gold, silver, or bronze medal in the state. And then you go to the national. Now, at the national, it's a little bit more difficult to win a medal. So far, even though I've been in about 5 national senior games, I've only won ribbons. And the way they do this is the first, second, and third, of course, are gold, silver, and bronze.
Mhm.
And then the next 5, you get
Medal.
no, you get a ribbon.
Oh, okay.
So I have now several ribbons, and I'm up to 5. I've done 8, 7, 6, and 5. So I'm working my way up in order to, but when you go to the national, there are people from all 50 states, and so it's a little bit more difficult to win a gold medal.
So I'm
because there are other
gonna
people.
show our audience that photo of you with all your gear and your rewards, your medals across your chest. So we'll add that to this podcast so that they can see the rewards of your labor.
Right. Well, and it's because of the doing the triathlon that, remember I said earlier that if you're going to retire, you need to have an idea about what it is you're going to do in retirement. So I decided that I would do something that I really always wanted to do, but when I was in college, they did not have Title IX, which is which means that every high school and college has to have intercollegiate or inter high school, whatever that would mean, athletics for women. But because when I was in high school and college, we played games and sports, but there was no external competition.
So it's like intramural.
Well, yeah, and only within our college,
School, okay.
within our school. And I always had admired the fact that at Tennessee State, they had what do they call the Tennessee Bells? They were a great track team and they competed in the Olympics. And I'd always kind of wanted to do that. And I was very athletic. And, I played basketball and softball and we ran track, played, did I say volleyball? But so I decided, I think that's what I will do when in retirement. And in fact, that is what I have done.
And you have
I've
just
spent my
surpassed most people. I mean, just think about it. We're in January, right? Everybody has their resolution. They're going to the gym. So we are the 14th of January. Some people have already given that up. Okay. But you decided after retirement at 72, after retiring from 2 careers at 72, that you're going to start not just being more athletic, to being a competitor. I've seen you work out. I've seen what you can do. But I think for some people, it's the start, finding out how to do that, where to do it, how to train for it. And I think that's why so many people give up 2 weeks into the new year when they have this ambition to do great things. And no matter what it is, no matter what the resolution is, I'm not going to eat any more bread, or I'm going to give up sugar for the month. And 2 weeks in, everything that they look at looks like sugar and bread, and that's all that they can want. So, how was it that yes, you were athletic when you were a young person in college and high school, but how did you gather up the gumption almost to be successful at it?
Well, my great aunts in my family, my mother came from a family where her father, who was my great grandfather, who I spoke of earlier, who was an enslaved person.
Yes.
He had 18 children. Uh, his first wife, there were 14 children.
Mm-hmm.
And then she died. He married her sister, and then they had four more children. And so I got to know
All in the family, I
right,
guess.
I got to know my great aunts. And one of them told me that that their father said to them, one of my children is going to live to be 100. Well, one of the children did, my Aunt Lee, lived to be 99. And so I decided I'm going to take up that mantle. I'm going to live to be 100 or 100 plus. And so I decided this when I was in my 30s. And I read something. Remember that I was sitting in a doctor's office. I was selling insurance, and I was sitting in the doctor's office, and I read this magazine, and it said these are the things that you have to do if you want to live to be 100. And I read them. You have to eat correctly. You have to have a good mental attitude. You have to exercise. One of the things was you have to use a seatbelt. And that was before people, I mean, we were required to use them, but nobody was using them. And so I decided I'm going to use a seatbelt. And so I had heard that it takes 21 days to form a new habit.
Mhm.
So I went to my car. Well, within 2 weeks, I was using my seatbelt every day. I mean, I didn't even think about it. I was doing it. And I realized that I am a disciplined person. Of course, I'd always been disciplined as a student, but when I decided to do something else, I can do it. So I made up my mind that I was going to live to be 100, and I would do those things that were necessary. So I decided to exercise regularly. I had already been walking and swimming and biking, but I decided to make it, I was doing it regularly. We would get up every morning and go walking, but to really record it, to make sure that I was doing the exercise, that I was maintaining my weight. And so I just became more disciplined about taking care of my body. And
Before we reveal, because I know our audience wants to know, well, how old is she? But we're going to take a break and we'll be right back. All right, we're back. And so, in our last conversation, you were talking about the discipline of preparing for what you wanted to do next. So I started this podcast, or the idea of this podcast, when I was getting ready to retire. And so I would say it was sort of a 2-year idea, as I thought, oh, I've done this a long time. I could retire and do some other things with my life. Um, and so I remember having conversations with the retirement office, and listening to programming about, having a life after retirement, planning your finances after retirement and what all of that meant. Um, and then I decided there have to be other people, other women in the world, other people in the world that just want not to do this full-time gig anymore. But that wasn't what I wanted because I loved working with the students that I was working with all of these years after 31 years at the institution. But I wanted to do something that was meaningful to me, that I didn't have to do every day. And so I was talking to my son about doing this podcast. And I have forgotten now what the first name of it was. And he was like, yeah, I don't know, let's bounce some things off of one another. And that's how we ended up with Surviving Our Seasons. That my job was for a season of my life. My retirement is just a season. It's a change of seasons. Um, but I was a little nervous about what that meant. It was like, well, I'll still get a paycheck. I might still have my health insurance, but what will I do day to day? And quickly I learned the value of a nap and how to get quality sleep without an alarm. One of the things that sleeping without an alarm is that you don't go to bed with 10 things on your mind about what you have to do tomorrow. Now, I have been equally as busy during this first year of retirement. I had some surgery, and that took a whole portion of this first year of retirement just to heal again and become active again. And I am loving it because, like you, I enjoy working out. I am back in the gym. I have a personal trainer who is just making me accountable for getting in the gym again and performing at her level. So I am enjoying that. So I just started that about 3 months ago, and it's been almost 1 year of being retired, and I am loving it, loving it, loving it. And what I want to say to my audience and other people who are thinking about doing something next, whatever that is, and just don't be afraid. One foot in front of another. And again, making a plan for it. As you have said, you got to have an idea about what you want to do. Some people just really want to do nothing, but it's easier if you make a plan and then you can fit so many other things into your day. Because now I don't know how I ever worked because I have so many things that I do during any given day. So I'm really hearing that from you and learning, and maybe I learned it from you that that's how I could do it. That's how I could approach it and be successful doing that. So at this stage of the game, I know you got another senior games coming up this summer that you're going to be participating in. And over the past couple of years, you have been involved in a movie project and now a upcoming book project.
No, just a chapter in a book.
Okay, well, a book project where you're going to be highlighted. Can you talk about that a little bit? I don't know how much information is already out there, but I know that the movie project, which I've seen several times, and I've passed that along to friends. So whenever something is happening in life, and I was like, my friend Ann is my mentor, and she already did X, Y, Z. They get sick of me, but that's okay. That's a whole nother talk. Can you talk about the project that you've done with Queen Latifah, Queen Latifah's production company?
My swim coach I was introduced to by one of my longtime friends, Madeline Rabb. Um, the two of us, well, first of all, I was in the senior games, and Madeline heard that I was getting medals, and she came to me and said, I want some medals.
I understand it. I understand.
Her that, okay, well, we'll go to a state senior games and we'll get you some medals because, we'll go and we'll swim. So we did that. And so our coach uh, always told us that he had his friend who was a movie director. And, eventually he thought we would be good for being in a movie. Well, he had formed an organization many years ago, over 20 years ago, called Team Dream. And Team Dream is an organization of women who he would teach to swim. And then maybe they would start swimming in the fall. And by the next fall, they were actually competing in triathlons. And so that's the organization that I became involved with when I decided I wanted to do a triathlon. I was really surprised to find out how many Black women in Chicago are triathletes
Wow.
because of this particular
Of all ages?
Of all ages. I don't think I'm the oldest. No, I think he had someone before me that might have been older.
Mhm.
But yes, and sometimes I think that he once had a grandmother, a mother, and a daughter who
Wow.
were all triathletes at the same time. But anyway, after I had done, and Madeline and I had done these triathlons, and I had engaged other people to come and join the senior Olympics or the National Senior Games, because it's a lot of fun. You meet people from all 50 states when you go to the national, and even at the state level, there are people from all over your state who come to participate. And at the National Senior Games, you don't just have to do one in your state, you can go to other states. So I have competed in Iowa, Indiana, New Jersey, Maryland, Wisconsin,
Wow.
and Illinois.
Mhm.
And during the summer, when you're competing, like last summer, I competed in 3 different states, even though and all of that goes into my record. But so I've qualified to be in the next Senior Olympics, which will be, as I said earlier, in Des Moines, Iowa. But Madeline and I have been going to these national and state competitions. And so one day we got a call. It's like on a Thursday, we got a call saying, can you do a film? We're going to be in town on Monday. So
they
it
wanted to come and film you guys?
Right.
You too? Okay.
And it was just like, it just happened. Normally I'm traveling. It just so happened I was going to be in town and we were preparing to go to the National Senior Games, which was going to be held in Fort Lauderdale. So they came, we just heard about it on Thursday. Monday, they arrived in my apartment. All of a sudden, I had all of this equipment all over my apartment. I mean, because I thought that they were going to maybe have, a cameraman and maybe a director to tell us what to do. But we had a producer, the cinematographer, we had a sound person, we had, assistant producer, and they came and they filmed me at my home, just interviewing me. And then and then they did the same thing with Madeline. And then they filmed us together in the swimming pool. And then they did a lot of film work that doesn't actually end up in the film. But they used drones. I have a convertible, and they followed us in my convertible, this drone traveling through the city. Right. And anyway, the film ends up being 18 minutes long, and it's part of a group of Queen Latifah and um the
Marla Bracachio.
no, the yes,
Mm-hmm.
but the
Marla Bracachio.
um I'm trying to think of the cosmetics company.
Oh,
Um
CoverGirl.
right, but it's part of
It's
I'll think
Boss. That's Boss.
right.
So you'll come back to it.
Hard to get. Well, they filmed us in our homes. In my case, they filmed me at my building outside in the lawn.
Mhm.
They, I have a convertible, so they filmed the two of us sitting in my convertible, talking to each other. They've got a drone following us from my building through the city all the way to Northerly Island,
Okay.
the park.
Mhm.
And the it, they have a lot of footage, but they didn't use all of it. But they filmed us for 4 days in Chicago, and then they followed us to the National Senior Games in Fort Lauderdale. They filmed us for 6 days there. And in
Wow.
fact, this is all part of a venture between Queen Latifah and her company called the Queen Collective and Procter and Gamble, who pays for it. They were trying to make sure that there are women who get experience in movie production. And so our director got a grant. And that's how we happened to film Team Dream, which is the name of the organization that had been in Chicago for over 20 years.
So we
And
can link um the video, the short video to our podcast. I think, okay, we will definitely add that
right,
to the
it's
podcast.
called Team Dream, and it's 18 minutes long. And the two of us, we didn't know what we were doing. We just said, "Oh, sure, we'll do it."
Why not add that to my
Right.
resume?
Well, the interesting thing is that when we got to Fort Lauderdale, they wanted to do some in the water scenes. And when they had the pre-production meetings with Queen Latifah, well, we did not meet, but our director had been, Queen Latifah kept saying to the assembled group, Letitia is going to need, who is the director, Letitia is going to need an underwater camera. And she said it at the meeting several times. So Letitia felt we really got to do some underwater scenes because Queen Latifah said we needed an underwater camper. So when we got to Fort Lauderdale, we spent a whole day. They rented an entire swimming pool, an outdoor swimming pool, and they filmed us all day long in this, I mean, over and over in this pool with an underwater camera. Well, we weren't really thinking about this because the very next day we were in competition. And they were then filming us with drones and underwater camera
Okay.
as we were competing. I mean, and they, of course, they had made arrangements to do this. And so they had to stay out of the way of the actual competition. But they managed to catch us the competition. And the film is really about two women, senior women, Black women, who prepare and compete at the National Senior Games. There's also information in the film about the fact that when we grew up in segregated communities. She was in Baltimore, I was in Jefferson City, Missouri. And we had separate swimming pools. And there has always been this myth that Black people don't swim.
Mhm.
And it's not true that in history, Black people were the greatest swimmers of all, because they were the people would go out and act if a boat capsized, they were sent out to, um, either say
Rescue.
rescue people, or to rescue things, the cargo.
Mm.
And so they were great divers and they were great swimmers.
Wow.
And so that's part of film that
And the film was featured at the Martha's Vineyard African American Film Festival.
yes.
Yes. So we didn't get to go to that one, but we went the following year.
Oh, you did?
Yes, we went the
Right.
following year,
Well,
but
we did not see the film until it was presented on at the film
film
festival.
festival.
And so we're sitting there, seeing ourselves on this huge screen. And afterwards, people are actually there were two times during the film that we got standing ovations. But at the end, we stood up to go on stage to be interviewed by the one,
Mara Black-Akil.
right. And we heard someone in the audience say, "They're here." And so we got an even bigger applause.
Wow.
But the film was in the Chicago International Film Festival, where we won 2 awards. And then we've won first place in several film festivals that are held around the country.
Mhm.
All this was very new to us. I did not know that there are 300 film festivals in the United States. And we've been in maybe 15.
Wow.
And we've won first place or in maybe 8 different film festivals.
That's wonderful. That's just wonderful.
But we did it without having any idea what this was going to be like. But it's people have seen the film, and then we've been interviewed several times on television, on podcast, on and the the film, when people see it, it's an emotional experience. Either, and it's multi-generational. Young people really like it, and older people really like it, and people feel inspired to want to swim.
Learn to swim,
Learn to
yes.
swim.
Especially for our communities.
Right. Well, usually after the film is shown, if we're there, there's usually a question and answer.
Mhm.
People always want to know, well, how did you begin? Not just swimming, you're athletic. How did you do that? So I always tell people the thing that if you really want to become more athletic, take care of your body, the first thing you need to do is buy some sneakers and just walk. Because you walk a block, then you walk 2 blocks,
Mhm.
then you walk a mile, then you end up walking several miles,
Mhm.
and then you become one of those people who does 10,000
Steps a day.
And I have a cousin who happens to be my age, and she's doing like 15,000 steps a
Mhm.
day.
Mhm.
But you have to just start someplace. And you don't just start saying, I'm going to run a marathon. You first have to run a block in order to build up to the point where you can run a marathon. And so it's the same thing with swimming. You can learn even if you don't know how to swim, you can find a coach, or you can go to
Take
the
lessons.
Y, take lessons to begin swim.
Mhm.
Because swimming is it's good for your body, and it's it doesn't stress
Mhm.
your body as much as walking or biking or
right.
running.
So I want to just go back for just a second, because it had to be emotional for you to see this film. Yes, you had done the work. You knew that you could swim at this point, but seeing it in that room in Martha's Vineyard, and then to sort of reflect back to not being able to learn to swim in a pool that wasn't segregated during a time, that had to be a fulfillment that sort of just came full circle. It just hearing you say it is emotional for me. Um, did you did you ever think at a time when you were swimming in segregated pool situations that you'd be doing this
Of course not.
in Martha's Vineyard
Right,
in a movie produced by Queen Latifah's production company
right,
about swimming and taking care of yourself.
right. Well, first of all, I'm of an age that I grew up attending segregated schools. My father was the principal of the all-black school in Jefferson City, Missouri, and he'd been the principal in Columbia and in Poplar Bluff, where he grew up. He was the principal of the all-black school. So I grew up in Jefferson City. It was my father and some other men in the community who went to the city and said, we need a swimming pool in the Black community.
Hmm.
So they built a pool. And so my father taught me how to swim because he became in the summer, he wasn't, the elementary school wasn't open,
Open. Mhm.
but so he was in charge of the community activities at the community center. And then he went from those were just, games and playing and sports.
Mhm.
But then he went to manage the swimming pool. And so all of my friends, we learned how to swim and we competed. Now, in fact, I've said that was the last time I competed until I was in my 70s.
Mhm.
And so never in 100 years would I have thought that I would get the attention that I've gotten, and Madeline feels the same way, that we've gotten so much attention as a result of being in this film, because we've done so many other things that we consider important, but all of a sudden we're in a film. And you mentioned earlier that there's going to be a book that's going to be published in
Mhm.
March. And I don't know the exact title
Mhm. Mhm.
of the book, but there's a chapter in it about Madeline and me. And it the book is about badass Black women athletes.
All right now.
So I've
This is my
accomplished.
friend Ann. I'm just letting y'all know.
So I've actually accomplished what I decided to do when I retired, which was to become an athlete and to concentrate on that. So my regimen is that I work out with a trainer 3 times a week at 6:30 in the morning, and on Saturdays we do it at 6:15. And then I work out with my
That
swim
sounds
coach.
like an alarm clock. Lord have
Well,
mercy.
I swim out with my swim coach once a week, and then I swim other times during the week. But I am doing this because I'm taking care of my body. Because if I'm going to live to be 100, I want to be able to do things
Mhm.
when I'm 100.
Yeah.
But um, I need to circle back. How did I do this? Um, when I can't remember, I can remember the year. It was 2004. I decided that I wanted to go to Antarctica. And none of my friends wanted to go to Antarctica. So I decided to go off to Antarctica, by myself. I booked myself on the passage on a boat, a ship that would take me to Antarctica. And then I had an opportunity to spend time in South America as a result, afterwards. And I had so much fun, especially when I got to Brazil. I was hanging out, I was lying in the sun, we were staying up late, um, and, eating great food, but, running around during the day. And I actually exhausted myself. And so on the way back to the United States, I caught a cold. And I was the first person that I knew and any of my friends and associates knew who got shingles.
Mm. Yes,
It
I
was
recall that.
it was
Yes.
the most excruciating pain that I've ever experienced. And actually, it just sort of brought my life to a halt. I was working at Gamaliel, but for 1 month, I did nothing but just sort of sit in a chair. And for a whole year, I did not exercise. I mean, I was used to working out and walking and swimming and biking. I did none of that. But so in order to get myself back in shape, after a year, I began to miss and feel really out of it because my body wasn't moving the way that I wanted to. But the pain of shingles is so excruciating that I just couldn't. And of course, it was only maybe after 6 months after I got shingles that they came out with a vaccine.
Mhm.
And so now people don't have to go through this experience. You
Mhm.
can get vaccinated. But it was the first time that I realized, oh my goodness, I'm old. Because if you read the literature about shingles, it's something that old people get. I mean, it was like, what?
Yeah, I
Oh,
remember that set you
I'm an
back.
old person. And so I decided in order to really get back, I was going to have someone to help me. So I got a trainer. And so for over 20 years now, I've had a, a trainer. And so I work out with a trainer. And uh, it's all of this began to evolve into my wanting to be more athletic.
Mhm.
And so remember I said that in order when you retire, you need to have
A
a
plan.
plan. And I'd also been told that you will somehow or the other, you will know when it's time to retire. So one day I was talking to the executive director and I was telling her about my plans for next year. My plans were I was going to be in the National Senior Games and that I was going to be climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. And it suddenly dawned on me, wait a minute, I think I'm saying I'm retiring. And that's when I knew that I was going to retire. And I knew then that my focus was going to be on being athletic. And that,
Can you tell our audience when you decided you were going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro and which birthday that was? Because that was some time ago now. But which birthday was that?
well, that was in
Yeah,
2014.
you don't have to do that math. Just
Oh, I know, I was 74.
and you trained for over a
Yeah,
year to get ready for that.
right.
Now that's 2004.
Mhm. No,
So
it was
that
2014.
okay, so that's 10 years
Right. It was
out from suffering with shingles, and I remember that so much. And you were just completely out of it, and I had never seen you like that.
right.
Um, but overcomer you are.
Right.
You
Well,
did climb. You did all of the training,
yes.
and you got on that mountain, and I was like, "Look at my friend! Look at my friends!" And we were all cheering for you. We were
Right.
absolutely cheering for you. Um, so
So I was
now, before we move on, all of this preparation for swimming, conditioning led you to your new thrill, which is why it's hard to get on your calendar because, first of all, you've been to every continent now?
yes,
Every
all
continent.
7 continents. I've been in 40, 47 states. I still have 3 to go. No, North Dakota, Montana, and Alaska. So
Mhm.
I've been to all the other states. Recently, I actually sat down and made a list of the number of countries that I've already been to, and there are 73. I've been to 73 countries.
So this little gadget on the end of my mantle here, that was a new addition after the holidays, after the Santas came down, the globe went
Mhm.
up
Oh, okay.
because I'm going to keep putting pins in the globe as we travel more and more.
Right.
So I'm excited about that. But let's talk about what you're doing in
Oh,
these new areas now.
okay. Well, um, one day I was at one of my doctors and she keeps telling, please don't tell that story again. But I was actually at my gynecologist. And she was asking me, well, what kind of exercise do you do? And I said, I swim. And she said, well, I don't swim well, but I've been diving since 1995. And then she started telling me all about diving, scuba diving. And she was so excited about it. And she was a part of this group, and they were going to go to Palau and Yap, which are in the Pacific Ocean. And she said, you really ought to, think about this. So she
Where in this Pacific Ocean?
in the Micronesian islands, there are these
Okay.
two islands called Palau and Yap. And so she said, you can call the our dive master and you can take classes and you can learn to dive. This was maybe in the fall, and they were going to go in the, maybe maybe February of that year. And so I called the dive master and made arrangements. And at the end of our conversation, this was like I left the doctor's office, got on the phone in my car, called him, made arrangements, and then said to him, well, his name is Mike Parnell. I said, Michael, how old is the oldest person that you've taught to dive? And he said, an 86-year-old nun. And I said, since at that time,
You weren't that age.
I said, oh, well, I'm 76. Now, piece of cake. So when everybody went to Palau and Yap
Mhm.
in the winter, I was a diver. And uh I qualified, there's a different word for it, but I qualified in Pacific Ocean. I got my
How
qualification.
far deep do you have to scuba dive?
Well, the kind of diving that we do is recreational, and the deepest you're supposed to go is 130 feet with the kind of equipment, the tanks, the air, oxygen, the nitrogen,
130 feet.
130 feet.
I heard that the first time, but what?
I have never been 130 feet.
Okay.
I've been 97.
Darn close.
Anyway,
Okay, continue.
right. Um, but it was being under the water is the most marvelous thing. I mean, my phone is ringing. My phone is ringing.
Okay.
I
Okay.
can hear it I can hear it in my ears.
So, how far down do you go when you're diving?
Well, with the kind of equipment that we use, and we're doing recreational diving, the tanks that we go use, we're only supposed to go down to 130 feet.
130
That's like
feet.
that's maybe a 13-story building.
Oh, right. That's a lot.
Right.
But are you doing?
I've only been down to 97 feet.
Okay.
And the dive master tells me that as you get older, you really shouldn't go that deep because there's a lot of pressure
Yes.
on your body. And so I'm always doing the bad things. So, I'm like at 70. He wants me to really dive about 60. So, occasionally I'm more than that.
At 97, that's 20 feet lower.
Mhm.
That's a lot.
Yes, but it's so much fun.
It's exhilarating.
It's exhilarating. It's so beautiful under there. The coral, so gorgeous, and the fish, and to be under the ocean with sharks swimming past us,
No,
and be under
no.
the water
Mm-mm.
with manta rays, doing this above you. I mean, these beautiful sea animals, and then of course all the tiny little fish that are so colorful. It's just gorgeous.
I'm sure,
So,
and I'm going to take your word for that because that is definitely not on my bucket list.
so I've been diving in um, Palau and Yap, which are in the Pacific Ocean. I've been to Indonesia. I've been to Cuba. I've been to
Diving?
diving, right? Um, the Red Sea, um, and Bonaire, which is an island off the coast of Venezuela, where we go down there to just hone our diving skills.
Why is
So
that part of the world the place to do that? Is the water more friendly in that area? What is the
it's
situation?
Bonaire is known internationally as a great place to dive. And so our dive master has relationships with people down there. We
Mhm.
go to the same dive resort, and you can actually just walk off the jetty that goes out. It's like a ramp.
Mhm,
You just
mhm.
jump off and dive from the side of the
It just
right.
just
You don't
sink
have to
down
go,
for a
right.
while
You don't
and
have to go on a boat.
you feel at ease doing that.
Yes, I love that.
Yes, you do.
I love
Yes, you do. I know you do. Um, I I can swim. I'm not a strong swimmer, so every now and then I take another swim class just to be sure that I'm breathing correctly, that I'm still able to tread water. Um, but I've done that mostly in my adult years. After my children were born, I was determined to become a stronger swimmer every year. So I was taking a class every year. They started swimming when they were 3, 4, and 5 years old. They were taking swim classes. So um, they like being in the water. Um, one of them's a stronger swimmer than the other and loves to do things like snorkeling. I snorkeled for the first time this summer. I was determined. Was this summer? Last summer. We were in Jamaica and I was determined. I said, I'm getting on this boat and I am going to snorkel. I am going to go when everybody else goes snorkeling. I'm going to do it. And it really was breathtaking. But I'm on the top of the water,
Right.
holding on, holding on to that life preserver. I'm like, I'm out in all this water. So the guy who took us out to do the snorkeling was breaking little crackers or something in the water, and all of the little fish just come up around your face, and it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. I can't even imagine how far. So once upon a time, I saw a show on 60 Minutes about scuba diving and how, I mean, they were really going down and down to the darkness of the water. Um, the film crew that was with them was floating down with these scuba divers who were just, filling their lungs with air as they go down. They were talking about, when they were being interviewed, they were talking about how to stretch your lung capacity.
Right, but those were skin divers. They didn't have tanks.
Um,
No,
okay,
yeah,
maybe so.
right.
So
That's
any
a whole
distance below a foot under the water. I'm not trying to be involved in that project, but am in awe that you do it regularly. How many times have you been scuba diving so far? Because I know you already have like 3 trips planned coming up.
Right. I mean, I've mentioned all the places that I've been,
Yes,
but some of those places I've been twice.
right, right.
Um, maybe 20.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's move on.
Right.
So, if my audience uh, doesn't do anything else but walk away from this conversation motivated to start somewhere,
Right.
to start where they are. Um, if their thing is to be fit, if their thing is to find their next project, if their thing is to learn how to do something new, I hope that with this conversation, they'll just get up and do it.
Right. Well, Madeline, we've been interviewed all over the country, and she always says, if it's something that you really want to do it. Don't
That's so easy to say for some people, and then there are those of us, and I have to include myself at different periods of my life. Either I didn't have time or it would have taken away from family um, to do some of the things that I wanted because I wanted to be all in, with whatever the kids were doing. Um, that may have taken my time away from that space, and I didn't. But, all those years ago that I was doing the military style fitness training, that's when my boys were really little. And I was gone every day to the gym or to some activity getting fit. And I was determined and I was in the best physical shape of my life. And my goal at this stage of my life is to get that back, to get that back. So having gone this past year through some surgery and um, some healing, I am still not 100%, but I am 90%
But you
back.
started.
And I've already started
Right.
the process of getting stronger. So I'm lifting at least twice a week with my personal trainer. And then I'm in the gym 2 times a week. Um, Having a personal trainer is everything. I'm going to need another job though. I'm going to need a job.
It's the best.
It is the best to have an accountability partner. I'm afraid not to have a personal trainer. But right now, I still have it. Still have
Right.
her in my life.
Well, you and I happen to be, what's the word? Able to have
Yes,
personal
correct.
training, but some people can't.
Exactly.
But there's so many books, there's so many articles about how to become fit.
And with the internet,
Right.
there are a million.
Right, on the internet,
Yeah.
it'll tell you how to put together a program. Because if you really, really want to be fit, you can be. You don't have to have a trainer. But as I said, just start. The starting point, I think, for everybody is to get a pair of sneakers and go out and start walking. Walk with a partner, walk by yourself, walk with your dog. Uh, walk around the park, walk up and down the street, go to the beach, walk along the lakefront. All of those things one can do if you're determined to be fit. You wanted to know, I think, how how you overcame things.
Mhm.
And I would say that early on, I've been fortunate
Mhm.
enough to get jobs where I didn't have to be in competition. You know, someone would always come to me and say, I think you could do this, or I think you could do that. And even though I had not ever done any of those things, I would take them on. And I think that's why if I decide that I want to do something now on my own,
You
you
believe
know,
it.
right. And, you know, I think that one of the stumbling blocks was when I got shingles. I had to overcome all of that pain and get back to being a fit person. Oh, and I think it came from the fact that I've always had these jobs, and usually it was a job that nobody else had had before. So
Mhm.
I was always beginning something. When I went to Eastern Illinois University, they had never had a costume designer, so I had to build that. When I came to Northeastern, they had not had a costume designer. I had to build that
Mhm.
program. When I became the assistant to the president, there had been someone in that role, but I had to do it on my own.
Mhm.
When uh, the last job that I had at the University of Illinois at Chicago, I was associate chancellor and director of community relations. They'd never had anybody do that.
Mhm.
So I had to figure out how to do that, how to get the university in the public eye, the community's eye. And so I think it's that taking on jobs that nobody else has ever had and establishing them, building them, that is just part of my spirit. Recently, I was at a university and the young people asked, well, you know, what have you had obstacles in your life? You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
how did you do this? And yes, everybody has obstacles. You know, there are things that occur, you might get sick, or you may have somebody who wants to prevent you from doing your
Mhm.
best job in your job. You may have, you know, not enough money to do certain things. But if you decide that that's your goal, then you just push through until you've accomplished it.
Mhm.
Um, One of the things that you asked me, and I really don't have a good answer for, was is there something that I didn't achieve or
Mhm.
something I didn't,
Or do you have any regrets
any regrets?
about something that you didn't achieve?
I'm going to be one of those people when I leave this earth will probably say that I don't have any regrets. I mean, certainly there are, you know, if I had more money, I would have done something
Mhm.
else, or if I'd had um longer personal relationships,
Mhm.
you know, maybe, you know, maybe I would regret the fact that I, you know, didn't stay married long enough to have children. That might be a regret. But in terms of my life and looking back on all of the things that I have done and all of the things that I have accomplished, I don't think that I'm going to say that I regret anything.
Okay, so two questions. Uh, so I already know the thing that you're, well, I think I know the thing you're most passionate about right now is continued travel and scuba diving as often as you possibly can. And I am going to ask you the question about the most exciting person maybe you've ever met. Only if you want to reveal. Um, or we could substitute that question for your top three places that you visited that you would recommend.
Well, in terms of the most interesting person
Okay.
that I've ever met, uh, I had the opportunity to go to Libya when I just started in the insurance business. And I went because they were having a African women's conference, but they invited some people from other countries, and I happened to get invited to come to Libya. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to meet and have a conference with Colonel Gaddafi, who was um, at that point, I mean, he had just taken over the country, maybe about 4 years, and um, he wanted to meet with the American delegation, but then he wanted to meet just with me. And the reason he wanted to meet with me was that he had read my resume and he knew that I was in theater. And he wanted to find out if I would be interested in coming to Libya to form a theater company because he had seen Miriam Makeba in a stadium where she was singing, and he saw how she was able to get that audience, up and thrilled and on its feet. And that's the kind of experience he wanted people to have in theater. And of course, I have friends who to this day do not understand how I could have said, no, I don't want to do that. But he was at that point in his life, he was very, very handsome. He's very, very wonderful. He at first in our meeting with him, he used an interpreter, and then one of the women who I was with, Anita Boswell, who was the what's the name of the school that you high school you attended?
Whitney.
She was the sister of Whitney Young.
Oh,
And Anita said to him, we know you speak English. And so he stopped speaking Arabic and started talking to us in English. But he was very engaging, very charismatic. And, all these women from all over Africa, were just elated to be in his company.
I'm sure that that's definitely not a box lots of people can check. Um, how about the top two places that you have visited in all of your travels that you'd recommend? You've been to every continent. I've never been to Africa, so that is on my bucket list. There's so many places in the world that I still haven't visited. So, recommendation, where you had the most fun.
Well, the place that I have returned to several times now, and is the top of my list, is Egypt. And it's because of the antiquities that you have an opportunity to see. And it's because when you're there, you see that the pyramids and all of the huge statues and buildings and columns
And still exists.
still exist over 5,000 or more years. Many of those things were built by Black people. I mean, it's just absolutely the most exciting place that I've ever been. To go to down under the ground at the great pyramids in Giza, or to go to the the it's the burial grounds for the kings and the queens. And you go under and you see that all the paintings that are still in color after 5,000 years. I mean, all the things that these people were doing, and it's just thrilling to be there. The second most interesting thing, I think, is to go on a safari. There's nothing like, I'm not really an animal person. I mean, I'm not a cat and dog person, but to see here, if you go to the zoo, you might see 5 elephants. There's nothing like seeing 100 elephants all at the
Wow.
same time, or
A whole herd of them.
a herd of zebra, or a herd of
Wildebeest.
wildebeest, or to see a plane of lions just lying there, and you drive through and they don't do anything because they have been having sex, and they've been eating, and so therefore, they don't pay any attention.
They're at home.
They're at
You
home.
just coming through.
Right,
Okay.
right. So that's and I would say that the other two places that have been most thrilling were China and
Okay.
India. Uh, in To me, it's the amount of history and the amount
Mhm.
of civilization that they had, 5, 6, 8 million, not million, 1,000 years ago,
Mhm.
that are still standing. And it's just impressive to go to those places. And then, of course, I'd have to add other things as to see the world underneath the water as a scuba diver.
Yeah, I'll put that one on my bucket list, but not at the top.
Right.
Not at the top.
Right.
Thank
Right.
you so much, Anne. This has been a wonderful conversation. Some things actually probably I didn't know that we've talked about. Um, but we've had so many wonderful conversations in the 30 plus years that I've known you, and I've learned so much about life and um, sort of taking a risk sometimes to live life bigger than I possibly dreamed about as a young girl. Um, when I met you, um, hearing of your experiences, um, sort of becoming part of your inner circle, um, opened doors for me and opened opportunities. So um, I appreciate you for being who you are. Um, you're always a wonderful listener, and you've always motivated people to sort of step outside of the box.
Right. Well, Stephanie, I need to tell you that all of these years that I've known you, I've admired you, and I've admired you and your husband because as a single person, I mean, I was married and then divorced, but as a single person, I didn't have the opportunity to raise a family. And I've always admired how the two of you took on parenting seriously, to make sure that your two sons had educational opportunity, that they excelled. And
Spoiled rotten.
right, but you did it seriously. And from our conversation, I could always tell that this was so important that you all talked about it and you all made plans for your children. It didn't just happen.
No,
It was a serious endeavor that you took on, and I've always admired you.
we owe it all to our village because we could not have done it just the two of us. We did a lot of it, but we had a wonderful village. Um, and I thank them. I thank you for your part in that village. Um, as you know, I lost my mom very early, and that for me has always been that thing that drives me to keep working hard. Um, Mostly because she just didn't get the chance to do it long term. but I never, not one day, did not know that she loved me unconditionally because she would say it every day, how much she loved me. And I just wanted to embody that
And
for our family.
you did that for your boys. I mean, they knew their mommy loved them,
Yes, they
but their
do.
daddy loved
Loves
them
them.
also.
And their daddy loved their mommy.
Right. And their mommy loved their daddy. And they
Absolutely.
grew up to be, accomplished young men.
I think
And
so.
I'm proud of them as well as
Auntie
I
Ann.
know, right.
Because
I'm proud of them too.
as one of my sons always says, you and Auntie Ann are kicking it.
And then he found how old Auntie Anne is.
Mhm, mhm.
And I think we didn't even mention it in our talk.
And we don't
But
have to unless you'd like
oh
to.
no, everybody knows that I'm 85.
Wow.
I'll be 86. And so this year at the National Games, I have gone into
To the next category.
I'm in the 85 to 89 category.
Well, you're gonna grow out of that one too. You're gonna
Well,
grow out of
I'm
that.
really looking forward to it because I have met uh, women and men at the National Senior Games who are 100, who are 100 plus, who are swimming, running, doing field field sports, who are, and even people, when I first went to the National Senior Games, I saw these people with on crutches and in wheelchairs, and they had badges that said athlete. And I kept wondering, what do they do? I found out that one of the sports, the shuffleboard,
Okay.
and these people are there. I mean, and you think of athletes, you're thinking of people who are athletic and trim and they have a little swagger. No, people are all sizes, all shapes, all
And as they have determined that as long as they are able, if their limbs are able, that they are going to be a part of this competition.
right. It's adds it adds so much to our lives, gives us an opportunity to use our bodies, use our minds, and to stay active and have fun. And so that's really what it's all about. And then others of us, I'm intentionally trying to live to be 100. I may or may not reach that goal, but I am certainly trying.
Well, I just want to be able to celebrate with you when you turn 100. Because every birthday party that I've ever helped you plan has been off the chain and has mostly been on a ship or a boat somewhere.
Right.
But big fun, big fun. Lots of laugh out loud moments, lots of girlfriend sharing. So I love you so much.
I love you,
Thank
and I'm
you
so
so
glad
much.
that you're doing this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. And
And
thank
I
you for
think
being a part of it.
I think it'll be important for other people to see and to begin to think about, what am I going to do with my life? I have a friend who was in executive, not training, but executive a talent search.
Mhm.
And when she decided to go to change, she had a card that went and it had a list.
Nice. I like it.
Right.
So a girlfriend of mine, you probably met at the birthday luncheon. Um, she gave me business cards after I retired that say retired. And the answer is no.
But you were right when you said, as a retired person, you don't know how you have those,
How did I
how to
work for 9, 10 hours a day?
right.
No,
I mean,
not again.
I mean, if you're active, you're not sitting on the couch.
Yeah, yeah. And that's important. Keep moving.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us in this conversation about surviving our seasons. Thank you. Until next time.